What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this video, I wanted to go ahead and do a lake breakdown of Leech Lake in Minnesota. We just got done with the Bassmaster Open, not last week, but the week before. And, you know, it's a fishery that really isn't known for its bass fishing. You know, locals know it for its bass fishing. There's really great bass fishing opportunities for both smallmouth and largemouth on Leech Lake. But it wasn't known as a tournament bass lake until really last year when Bassmaster went to Leech Lake. And after this tournament, I don't know if I'll ever go back, ever get the opportunity. I'd love to go back. It was a really interesting fishery that, you know, I targeted smallmouth primarily in the tournament, but it was just so neat to see. You know, the size, the average size of those smallmouth was phenomenal, and I've never seen more crawdads crawling on the bottom ever in my life. Never seen anything like it, really. You know, for example, I fished a chatterbait a lot, and every time it would hit the bottom, not every time, but a lot of times when it would hit the bottom, even just for a split second, a lot of times I'd reel up and there'd be a crawdad either that holds on all the way back to the boat, or you would see them, you know, hold on for a little bit and then, you know, release, and on live scope I could see them, you know, just kind of glide back down to the bottom. But really interesting lake overall. So what I wanted to do is kind of go over you know, my experience there, the ramps that I like to use, and also kind of break down the different areas that you might want to try for both largemouth and smallmouth, because there's a very big separation between those two. You either are fishing smallmouth areas or you're fishing largemouth areas. There's really not a whole lot of, you know, a mixing of those two species, because it just didn't seem like the habitat really commingled that much. Like, I didn't find that much vegetation on hard bottom areas. I'm sure it does exist, but in general, I never caught a smallmouth in an area I was targeting largemouth, and vice versa. It was really unique because, you know, I can catch, you go to Lake Champlain or something like that, which I would have thought this would fish very similar to. At Champlain, you can catch smallmouth and largemouth in some of the same areas. You know, you get on a flat that has a lot of grass, intermittent grass, and like hard sand bottoms and rock bottoms. You could probably catch both. Here on Leech, I did not do that at all. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I'll just break down, you know, Leech Lake from my perspective, which my perspective is limited to 1 week of experience. I'm not looking to, you know, blow any secrets out of the water here. I'm not looking to really, you know, make any locals angry by like pointing to exact, you know, spots or anything like that. It's just, I would like to help you guys, if you're going to Leech Lake, kind of eliminate some water and give you some areas to kind of focus on and some ramps that you might want to choose. So, all right, so let's get started. We're going to be using the Navionics app on my iPad here. Let's go ahead and we're going to start recording right now. So let's go ahead and check out Leech Lake. So for this tournament, we were launching out of Walker, Minnesota, which is right here in this area right here. The launch ramp that we were at, I believe, was right here. Good launch ramp. It actually had surprisingly decent parking. They have some unique parking there. It's a 2-lane boat ramp. It's got 2 small float docks next to it, and then some others down the beach, from what I recall. You know, if you're not having a major tournament, I'm sure that there's plenty of parking there, you know, because there seems to be good, like, parallel parking system that they've got there. They don't have like the usual big parking spots where you got the parking spots side by side. They're like, once you fill up that small portion of the ramp with the side-by-side parking, you get into more, you know, parallel type situation, because they got some narrow roads there. But anyways, good ramp there. Another ramp that I used for the tournament was right above this area right here. So you've got, what was this area named? Cabacona Bay. Outside of the little bridge area there, there's a ramp right off the road there that I used, and that worked out really, really well. Again, you do need to be, if you haven't fished Minnesota lakes before, you need to know they're going to check your boat for vegetation and invasive species. So you got that whole process. So show up with a clean boat, clean trailer, clean engine, clean trolling motor, clean live wells, all that stuff, and make sure that the plug is out when you before you get there, so everything can kind of drain out. So that process is going to be standard across the board. I have not, that whole trip, every single lake we went to, and we went to about 4 different lakes, every single one had somebody checking for invasive species. But anyways, so let's go into largemouth first. All right, so let's go into largemouth. Well, let's actually finish up on the ramps that I use. So those 2 ramps I used during the tournament and practice. Another one that I used to access the south end of the lake was this one right here. Trapper's Landing Lodge is where I ended up getting passed for that. It's a really, really nice resort down there. So if you're looking to come for a week and stay somewhere, really, really nice lodge. The launch ramp, they even have some like valet parking. They got a team there which will help you launch your boat. They'll go park the trailer for you, and then when you come back, they'll come get you. So really, really cool there. We just happened to get lucky and get a couple passes that we could access that. I'm not sure that you can actually get passes without staying there. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that. Whether just the general public can go and launch there. But I really enjoyed launching there because a lot of the fishing that I planned on doing for like smallmouth was down in this region of the lake. So those are the 3 ramps that I used. You could do some more research. I'm sure there's some other good ramps. The one thing I will say is that I did hear a lot about potential theft and vandalism at some of these some ramps, so you got to be pretty choosy, I think. So I think you're safe at the Walker City ramp. I think you're safe at that other ramp that was just north outside of the Cabacona cut there, but I'm not 100% sure. So there does seem to be some talk of theft in some of these areas. Now, we didn't see it during the Open, so thankfully we didn't experience that. But I'm just relaying what I've heard. So just be cautious, be aware. Always check for broken glass, safety glass at any ramp. If you have a lot of safety glass mixed in with the sand and the gravel, or on the asphalt, maybe it's not a place to stay. That's one thing I always look for. So anyways, that is launching. Gas stations, there's some gas stations in town. I think the easiest ones were closest to the casino. So the casino in town, I think it was like Wind River or something like that. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly the name of the casino. I never even really went in there, but there's 2 different gas stations there. That seemed to be the best for boats. They got a gas station in Walker, but that was a little bit tight, for a boat or a truck and trailer rig. So anyways, you can find gas stations. It's not that big of an issue there. All right, so let's get into fishing. Again, really, this lake is separated into largemouth areas and smallmouth areas. What I'm going to do now is kind of show you guys the largemouth areas, the general largemouth areas that you want to be aware of. and then the smallmouth areas that you want to be aware of. There's going to be plenty more. I didn't figure everything out in a single week-long trip to Leech Lake, but the research I did beforehand and what I saw in the water, I think that you can kind of take these, these areas to the bank, and they're a good place to start for you. So, all right. So the first largemouth area, let's start in the Walker region. This Walker area, had a lot of good vegetation, and the vegetation is really what brings the largemouth, into these areas. One of the most well-known areas on the whole lake for largemouth is this Steamboat Bay area. So this whole bay, right here is just full of wild rice, cane, and reeds, and lots of submergent vegetation. Now, when we were there, they had obviously started spraying the submergent vegetation, so there really wasn't that much milfoil or submerged grass. So it was mostly just wild rice, which is another issue on this lake you need to be aware of, is the regulations that they uphold for wild rice, because it's a subsistence, or I'm not sure exactly how they define it, but the wild rice is supposed to be preserved for the native population there, for them to harvest, and so you can't really enter that wild rice. So when you're fishing the wild rice, you can't bring your trolling motor through it like you do on Okeechobee with the Kissimmee grass down there. You got to be very delicate with the wild rice, because you can get reprimanded by the native law enforcement, or even just the local law enforcement, Fish and Game up there. So just be aware of that. Maybe read into it a little bit more. But you need to know you can't damage that wild rice. But this area is full of wild rice patches, full of round reeds. Flipping round reeds was actually something that I learned is a deal there. So flipping wild rice and round reeds and cane can all be really good. But I found that the buggy whips, those round dark green reeds, those tended to be really productive in certain areas. You fish around this big island here. There's a lot of points and pockets of those bulrushes in there, those buggy whips, and that seemed to be a pretty good bite when you found it. And that brings up a good point here. There's a lot of dead water on this lake, a tremendous amount of dead water for both smallmouth and largemouth. But it's very frustrating with the largemouth specifically, because there's a lot of stuff that looks great, but you have to fish to figure out where those fish are. You can't just pick it out because it looks good. You got to go and just fish your heart out to find those key little stretches. So when you go here, don't get discouraged if you're fishing some good looking stuff for a long period of time and not getting bit, because right around the corner, that next point of grass or whatever it is could be holding the mother lode. So you really just have to spend your time to find those areas. And that's kind of the thing that I realized the second day of the tournament, when I decided to kind of bail on smallmouth for a couple hours and go try to catch a limit of largemouth. I didn't catch any largemouth because I didn't find those stretches. I did not spend enough time finding them. So it's not just a lake that you can just go wing it and expect to do very well. You have to find those stretches of good, whether it's the wild rice or the reeds or the bulrushes, the buggy whips, any of that stuff, the cane, you need to find the right areas, or even the offshore submergent grass if you can find it. All right, so Steamboat Bay, big time area, definitely one of the best areas to look for a topwater bite with a frog or a toad or whopper plopper or something like that, or flip and pitch. Down here, it seemed like this bay right here, this big bay, I didn't have a lot of experience. You know, I didn't go in here and practice at all, but this whole bay had a lot of grass, and I know it's you know, I've heard from anglers that said that they caught a lot of largemouth in here. So this big area, and that brings me to another point. You know, this little cut through, this little channel that goes out from this bay. What's this bay's name? I knew it at one point. Agency Bay. This little cut through that goes from Agency Bay to the main lake, very, very important. You know, if you get a rough day, especially like a south wind, you know, that little cut through is going to be a great way for you to access the main lake as opposed to going through the narrows up here. Because it's going to allow you to bypass a lot of, I mean, this doesn't look like a short distance, but there's a lot of ground water for that, for like a south wind to build up. So that cut through was used by a lot of anglers, and you just have to idle through that, but it's a good trade-off. So those two areas, Agency and up here, seem to be really good largemouth areas. Steamboat, Sucker Bay here. Sucker Bay is real interesting. This is another good largemouth area. The creek looked beautiful. I never even caught a fish in there, but it was just a perfect mixture of like tannic stained water, lily pads, and all kinds of mixtures of grass. But didn't do well up there, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't turn on at some point. But Sucker Bay is just full. This whole shoal right here is just chock full of beautiful milfoil, and also on this side too. Really, Sucker Bay is it was the only place that I found that was really, really full of milfoil. Well, that's not true. The east side of the lake had some good opportunities too. So this is another good largemouth area, is Sucker Bay. This whole arm pretty much is a good area to look for largemouth, but you know, this definitely from here to here, you know, to the back, so halfway up this arm and to the back, this is a really good largemouth area. But again, especially here, it's hard because you're way offshore and you're flipping milfoil or fishing however you want to fish that milfoil, and it's really hard to distinguish where the best areas are. So drop waypoints when you start getting bit. Drop waypoints, and just keep track of those, because again, it's not something that you're just going to consistently get bites. You have to find the little patches of fish where they're hanging. So there are some like reeds, and they're not much in the way of like wild rice in the back of Sucker, but there's lots of buggy whips, lots of those round reeds. So yeah, that's another area. Up here in Portage Bay and Waboose Bay, this is another well-known area. I honestly did not get back here, but I can tell you just from looking at Google Earth and looking at the map here, you know, that this area is going to be another good largemouth area that you need to look at. And then finally, we've got this part of the lake, you know, Headquarters Bay and also Boy Bay. This whole big area right here is one of the largest largemouth areas on the lake, full of vegetation, different mixtures, lily pads, reeds, buggy whips, you know, cattails, milfoil, all that stuff. All that is in here. So you just have to spend a lot of time to find those stretches that are holding the fish, but lots of wild rice as well. Lots of flipping, top water, chatterbait, all that stuff you can do in here. But this is going to be a huge area that you know, just harbors one of the largest populations, if not the largest population of bass or largemouth bass on the entire lake. So this is going to be a big key area. Again, you gotta do your work to find those little populations. Okay, so from here, and by the way, I'm going to put my favorite largemouth options, you know, for Leech Lake. I did do a little bit of largemouth fishing during practice, but I also know what everybody else was using to catch them. It was pretty standard stuff. It wasn't anything crazy. Frogs and chatterbaits, flipping and pitching, you know, that sort of stuff. But I'm going to put those different options, some good things to try, in the description below for both largemouth and smallmouth. So let's kind of, well, let's talk about, so there's a couple other small spots. So you got Miller Bay down here. This is another largemouth area that, you know, not a huge population of fish. Urim Bay is another one. Neither of those have a huge population of largemouth. So it's, you know, but they do exist down there. But I'm not going to say that they're very popular. All right, so let's move over to smallmouth. So smallmouth, as opposed to largemouth, you know, smallmouth do like vegetation, but when we were there, it seemed like they had sprayed so much that there was no vegetation really mixed into those rocky reef areas that that you might, you know, see some smallmouth gravitating towards. So really it was all about those rocky reef areas. And so there's some major ones on this lake that are the most popular. Really, I'm sure you can go just about anywhere and find pockets of smallmouth populations, but these are some of the most popular areas. So I fished a lot of my time in this Pipe Island area. So Pipe Island is this little thin island here. And this whole area right here is one of the most popular smallmouth areas on the entire lake. Lots of boats there, you know, the first day and the second day of the tournament. And that's where I did most of my damage, the first day. Also, like these areas out here, any area where you find a big giant flat on the south end here, and then find some rock on top of it, it's all about those big boulders. If you find those, that's what the smallmouth are hanging on. So overall, these big flats with rocks, that's kind of what you're looking for. This one definitely had some fish. This one definitely had, you know, some fish, these like shoals and humps. And then once I got past here, there was kind of a dead zone until I got up to Stony Point. Stony Point is a big, well-known area. I didn't get to fish this actual Stony Point area. It was kind of like this side point, but this was big. I ended up catching a 7-pounder in practice off of this point. Big, giant flat of you know, boulders. I'm sure that you could probably find some isolated boulders out here too, but this was where everybody was focused, and that's where I had, you know, had success. Believe it or not, this area right here, I thought was going to be great. Could not find any of these, you know, those rocks out on that flat. So, anyways, so I heard stories of good smallmouth fishing in this bay by Walker. I cannot confirm that just because I didn't get on that bite. I'm sure that if you can find some, you know, rock in this area, you probably got some smallmouth. Another area, and we're just kind of going in a clockwise fashion here, this 2 Points area was pretty popular to a certain extent. There's some rocks right here, and then this Ivans Bay area. This was a really good smallmouth reef. Lots of big rocks there. I didn't get to venture all the way up here. Again, if you can find any areas, any of these big flats that have, you know, maybe a point type of structure that points out and has some reef on it, they're going to be really good. I know a lot of people that had a great amount of success in this region right here. We call this the Pelican Island. This is Pelican Island right here. And this whole area right here had a ton of rock. I know that that's a massive region, but you know, this was a very, very popular part of the lake to fish was around Pelican Island. Lots of big rocks. So you got to do your due diligence to find them out there. You know, this area looks good. but didn't get to experience that much. Didn't really find a whole lot down in these areas, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. It's just you don't have that much time to find everything in just a few days of fishing. So, but those are the key spots. I'm sure that this area right here, if you spent some time, this is another good area for smallmouth. I just did not have that amount of time for that. But anyways, guys, again, you know, I'll just run through some techniques that you might want to use for smallmouth. Drop shotting, you know, drop shotting like fuzzy dice was really popular. Drop shotting just your regular like trick shots, or you know, just a small worm, you know, probably works really well. I didn't throw the drop shot as much with anything except for a fuzzy dice. And then throwing jigs around the rocks, throwing Ned rigs, those sort of things, very popular for smallmouth. Largemouth, it's all about flipping like a 1 ounce weight and creature baits, throwing a frog, throwing a toad, maybe even like a skinny dipper style bait or swim worm like the turbo fatties. Those are all ways that they definitely catch the largemouth out there. But get creative. Really, you know, it's vegetation for the largemouth and boulders, you know, as big as you can find for the smallmouth. And the smallmouth hug really, really tight to those boulders. You're not going to see them most of the time with forward facing. You're just going to have to go ahead and fish it to see if they come off of those boulders. So 95% of the bass that I caught off of boulders, I never saw with live scope until I pulled them away from the rock. So don't get discouraged if you're not seeing them. They're there. They're just ghosts. They're so tightly tucked to those rocks. It is wild. So anyways, Leech Lake was an awesome lake. Very, very fun. Very interesting. Can get very, very rough. Just be very aware of an east or west wind. North, definitely a north wind too, you know, for a lot of areas. A south wind, you can kind of get out of the way and fish some of the best areas for smallmouth. You know, most of those reefs on the southern shoreline are really where it's at anyway. So if you have a south wind, you know, you can kind of be protected from it by fishing some of those really good areas. But just be very, very cautious out there because it does get very rough. So anyways, guys, hopefully this is helpful for you. I know that it's not super detailed, but it's something if you're going up to Leech Lake. There's not a lot of information for bass fishing up there. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water, and make sure you trust the process.